What is up, y'all? Coast to Coast Podcast live edition. And you might say to me, Joey, why are you doing this live? And I would say to you, sir or madam, I really don't know. But IC tries to do things live for you guys all the time. And we felt like tonight it just so happens, which is rare, that our schedules lined up and there wasn't a lot of heavy things for us to dig through on the show tonight. So we're going to do it live. We are brought to you by Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity. I am Joey Powell for Inside Carolina. Sean Moran and Sherrell McMillan are with me. As always, Sean looks really, really hella blurry right now. I don't know if his internet just went sideways, but we're glad both of those guys are with us. We've got plenty to discuss this evening. If you are in the chat, I don't know that we're going to get to a ton of questions tonight. But if we have some time at the end, we obviously will try our best. This is not really my wheelhouse to be able to take questions on the fly, but I will do my best to try to get you guys plugged in and involved for those of you who are joining us live on a Sunday evening as we record this. So, boys, as we have since we last talked, I guess North Carolina had quite a few days off after the Kansas game. We dove into that specifically. I want to talk a little bit about the game against American. I know Tommy did a great post-game breakdown with Rob, and IC's usual writers have done plenty about the actual post-game stuff and what happened in the game. But as we like to do here on the Coast to Coast, we want to dive in a little bit deeper and see if we can get a little bit more into trends, analysis, how that might play into the entire season. So first things first, I'm going to go to you, Sean. I'm watching North Carolina against American on Friday, and I saw the Jalen Washington I think that everybody thought he would be. I want to caveat this with the fact that, Sherrell and I love to say this because it's an old Roy Williamsism. North Carolina was obviously more gifted than American. But I saw Jalen Washington doing the things that I think he was expected to do as a blue chip recruit coming to North Carolina. And then coming off of his injuries, he looks as if he's rounding into the form not only that we expected, but that North Carolina needs from him in the post. So the first thing I want to ask you, Sean, is do you feel like this is something that can be sustained for Washington? And what are the things you're seeing him do right now that reminds you of that kid you saw in high school in Gary, Indiana?
I don't know if 6 for 6 can be sustained every game, but I think in terms of how he was scoring, getting some easy dunks off of Elliot Cadeau passes as well as RJ. But I did see a face-up jump shot. We talked about how that that could be one of the most unstoppable shots in college basketball. So I'd love to see him continue to take more of that or more of those types of shots because I think with his soft touch and with his reach, they're not going to be blocked. So I think for me, one of the things was just seeing the emotion that he did have running down the floor after scoring. Obviously, Elliot Cadeau was matching that emotion when they had the dunk or the pass to the dunk. But I think for him, it was seeing that emotion, and also we've talked about it, and we'll talk about it for probably other players. But the confidence of what he was doing in those minutes and how he was doing it, I think can hopefully translate or carry forward. But in terms of his overall game, he's moving well. Obviously, not the strongest or most athletic from a explosiveness perspective, but he has length. He has he has the size, and now he's putting it together at the basket as well as being able to showcase and step out, which we've seen before. But once again, I think him being able to pick his spots of when that occurs will be the big thing on how efficient he is going forward.
Sherrell, I think one of the things that probably happens by default when you cover these kids, as long as you do recruiting, you probably get attached to their personalities, but you also might get attached to who they are as a player at that age. When you see the catastrophic type injuries that Jalen Washington had, and you understand what they do to a player of his build and the type of game that he has, it can sometimes be understated. I'm asking you, do you think that this is something that not only makes you feel excited knowing him as a person and having followed him as a person, and like Sean alluded to, and I want to kind of push this on you as well. The emotion that we saw out of him, he hasn't had a chance to show that sort of emotion since he's been in a Tar Heel uniform, and so seeing him do the as Crispin called it, the zombie walk or whatever it was after one of his dunks, and seeing him get fired up after some good dimes from Elliot Cadeau. What does that mean for you, understanding his personality as a person?
Like Sean said, I think it means confidence and that he's kind of fully coming into who he wants to be and who he can be on the basketball court. I mean, for those who don't know, like Jalen Washington and I would say James Brown also, like those are guys who are going to be like congressmen one day probably. Like they have that kind of um,
Big mayor
just
vibes.
yeah, they have
Yeah.
that kind of ability to relate to people. When they walk into a room, people light up. Like they have, they're those guys. So when he did the, almost like a 2024 version of the Stackhouse strut after the dunk at Duke, it was kind of like, wow, where did that come from? Hadn't seen that before. And I think what we have to realize is that we've never seen, really, no one's ever seen a fully healthy Jalen Washington who has been under a college strength and conditioning program, who's gone more than 2 years without an injury. Like it hasn't happened since he started playing basketball. So this is literally the best shape he's ever been in. It's the best conditioning he's ever been in, and it looks like probably the most confident he's ever been in his body and then in his ability. So I think it's a big deal for UNC, obviously moving forward, because for some reason the thread on the premium board that is probably most read is who didn't UNC get in the transfer portal, and I think Washington and Vid Allen Lubin so far are kind of answering the call to say, well, Carolina has us, so to speak, and they're doing what they're supposed to do. So as long as he stays confident, he's like Sean said, he's not going to be 100% from the field most times this season. But as long as he stays confident and does what he does, is what we talked about in the offseason. Like, don't try to be Armando. Don't try to be Sean May or Tyler Hansbrough. Just be the best Jalen Washington you can be. And so far, I think he's doing it. We haven't seen the outside shot really come to fruition just yet, but we know he's capable. But through 3 games, you got to like the early returns.
And again, we want to caveat this. Sherrell actually quoted you on the radio show on Inside Carolina Live about things being a snapshot in time. And I want to make sure that we do the same when we kind of dive into any of these player analyses. Next one I want to get to is a little more perplexing, it's R.J. Davis. Through 3 games, I think North Carolina has seen him. He's still doing R.J. Davis things, but he's not necessarily shooting at the clip that we would expect. Specifically, knowing that 2 of those games have been in UNC's home gym. He's shooting about 31% from the field overall, but his three-point shooting has been a bit of a struggle. He's only 5 out of 25 on the year, and you saw some against American that were halfway down and came back out, but you also saw some too that were just they didn't look like RJ's typical shots. I don't think he's hurt, but I do think the announcers the other night and for what it's worth, you can probably take this at $5 and get half a coffee at Starbucks, but I think Crispin and Kevin Brown the other night actually did a decent job on the announcing, but they made this point. And I think there's something to it. How much do you think that RJ playing mostly off the ball now, with Cadeau getting the same minutes that RJ's getting almost? How much do you think that's affecting it, or do you think there's something else at play there that might be hindering his normal shooting as it is?
I mean, for me, I don't think I don't know if I buy that. He played the entire year with Elliot Cadeau last year, so like it's not like there's an adjustment to playing behind or beside
Minutes, I guess.
pass. Even
recognizing
then,
that it's solely I feel like it's solely Elliott getting point guard minutes now. Whereas last year it was RJ was doing more of the point guarding when Elliott wasn't. But I could be wrong. Again, I'm not trying to step on your take here. I'm sorry.
no, I just think I don't really necessarily buy that part of it. I thought Crispin did. I thought he did a great job until I realized he was a Crispin, and then it took me back to 2001 and some rough times.
I had to
So-
immediately block that out when the game started
Yeah,
because I was
so I
going to
had-
be in my feelings if I didn't.
I was telling people, I was like, oh man, this color announcer is really good. Like, I'm enjoying him. And then I found out it was a Crispin. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have to withdraw that. Let's bring it back because we can't
Strike
give
that
him
from the
any credit.
record.
No, but with RJ, honestly, I think he's just not making shots, and that's not That's not a huge deal. You have to think the caliber of shooter he is, that will eventually come around. Because again, last year he played with Ellie Cadeau the whole season and had the best year of his career by far. One of the best shooting seasons, if not the best shooting season in Carolina history. So I think Cadeau will do nothing but help him. And I think honestly, you never want your star player to struggle, but this is not the worst thing for UNC because you've seen the confidence that Seth Trimble has and that Elliot Cadeau has and that Drake Powell, is gaining, and that even though Ian Jackson didn't play Friday, he played against Kansas and played well, that he's getting. So, and I think we said this last week too, but like when those other guys are doing what they're supposed to do, it makes it a little bit harder to spam RJ, to triple team RJ, and that's going to help him down the road. So for me, I think it's just one of those things where he's struggling. It's happened before. It'll happen again to really talented players, and he'll get it going. Crispin did say a good thing too about just running a few things for him, not even necessarily for him to shoot, but just having the ball in his hands a little bit and letting him do some stuff. I do think that was a positive, and you could see that it did help his game. I think he ended up with 5 or 6 assists. So yeah, I think he'll be fine.
I mean, I think that's a great point, Sherrell. I'm going to come to you, Sean, for some follow up. I do think he has not become a poor shooter or a less effective scorer since North Carolina fans saw him last spring. Sean, I'm going to ask you: do you see anything mechanically that has you worried, or do you feel like it's just finding flow with a different cast of characters and a different style?
I think there have been several shots that have been in and out right on. There have also been several shots where it felt like he's been leaning a little bit and they're not right on the mark when he's missing. But I think you look at last year in his first 3 games, he started 5 of 18, so not as bad as this year, but still he didn't get off to a scintillating start last year in the first few games, and then go back 2 years. It really took into December for him to start shooting well to get that average up, because both him and Caleb were pretty poor early on in Portland and going through. So, I think we have seen this in the past in terms of he's not going to come out of the gates just, shooting 40% from 3 right off the bat. But last year, just from a spot up situation, he was in the 94th percentile. Right now, he's in the 17th percentile. So you think that's going to just come up. But I do think a lot of it is, not just with RJ, but across the board, the fit, with his team. I think he's trying to fit in a little bit more. He's not as ball dominant, so would like to see him with the ball in his hands, as Sherrell just noted. And even if he's not shooting, just having him, when he had the nice assist on the right hand side, for an easy basket, just getting him the ball a little bit more, I think could be helpful. But at the same time, I think he's just trying to fit in a little bit more maybe than he was last year, where you knew, hey, RJ and Armando are going to be the guys. Everybody else needs to come along with them. And now it's a brand new team, so I think he's almost, he's probably being a little more passive than he's used to. So I do think that fit is also part of what could be causing some of those slow start.
And Joey, I'm gonna jump in, but like, how many times in the offseason before last season did we say this team is built so everyone complements RJ and Armando? Like that was the whole thing. Like you had to come in and you had to do something that either helped them or that they could help you with, because that's how the team was built. I think this year we're seeing it's really built around the guards as a whole, and right now the engine of the guards is Cadeau. So to Sean's point, while he did play, and I'm arguing against myself, he did play against beside Cadeau all last year, but Cadeau is much different than he was last year. He's much more aggressive. He's pushing tempo much more. He's playing more minutes. He's being more aggressive offensively. So I'm sure that is an adjustment for him. But again, it only helps RJ the better Cadeau is. So I think these first few games are really good to put on tape. Like you were talking about last week, it gives teams something else to look at. And again, RJ Davis is not number 1 on the scouting report. We've seen, is lethal. So it's a good thing for RJ. And I'm really not worried at all. I think he'll not regress to the mean. What's the opposite of regressing to the mean?
Revert.
He'll revert to the mean. Yes, very soon.
I will also say, and if you're going to argue with yourself, then I'll answer my own question. I also think there's something to be said too, and Sean kind of led me here with the fact that North Carolina has typically been, for RJ's other seasons here, an inside-out team. And when you're playing a flow and a style that works through the post and then back out, it puts you in different spots for shots, and you're catching the ball in different places, and your cuts are different, and your movement off the ball is different. And even a player as dynamic as he is, there is, I guess, there should be expected to be a little bit of a little bit of adjustment. Excuse me. When you're working in something as new as the philosophy that North Carolina is trying to employ on offense right now. Sean, I've seen something here, and I know you are very much a points per possession guy. This team right now, and I don't have the Ken Palm number in front of me, but I know they're averaging about 95 points a game. That's my basic, back of a napkin math right here. But I think the way those points are coming might be a little perplexing for some. I think some of the folks, and shout out to everybody who's in the chat watching us do this live tonight. This is the Coast to Coast podcast from inside Carolina. I think some of the folks watching this might see what has kind of been some slow starts. I'll rip off what Tommy likes to say. One time is just a data point, two is a coincidence. But we've now got 3 games where North Carolina started fairly sloppily, and really, really turned it on in the second half, specifically against American, where they just absolutely just curb stomped what American was trying to do in the second half, defensively and offensively. Sean, what I want to ask you is, do you feel like that's okay? I mean, obviously it's worked for 3 games, and one of those games was against the number 1 team in the country. Or do you feel like they need to try to find some ways to enforce and dictate early on?
Well, definitely don't think they're going to be perfect at this point in time with how many pieces they're trying to integrate, not just from a new standpoint, but also from an improvement standpoint with Tremble and Cadeau, et cetera. But I think I'm a little disappointed that going into, and I know they play at Hawaii and then they have Maui, but they're playing the same amount of games that they did in 2016 going into, the 2017 team, but going into Maui in 2016. But they've had one more week. So I wish there had been 1 to 2 more games so that they could continue, because I think even through Maui, they're still going to be trying to fit pieces together and identify the right roles for players. So I think as part of that, obviously we have seen the strong second halves, but at the same time with Elon, it was almost reverse of having that 10 to 12 point lead that they just were kind of playing with for too long, and then all of a sudden they were down. So I think it is something, especially in Maui, where every team is really, really good. They're not going to be able to do that, and especially with the starting 5, you want to see them start out strong and get off to a good start. We go back to that Kansas game. It was just a few minutes, but we talked about it last week. I think their lead could have been a little bigger if they were executing at that high level that we have seen from them in certain games. So I'm not overly worried about the slow start, and I think we could continue to see it over the course of the next few weeks. Once again, as the team continues to gel and get used to each other, but at the same time, when you're playing in Maui against whether it's Dayton or Auburn, Iowa State, whoever it is, you got to take advantage of all 40 minutes, and we saw what happened 2 years ago in that Iowa State game when you don't. So I think to me, it's still the pieces are gelling and the roles are being figured out. But at the same time, the second halves have been, was fantastic with American 1.45 points per possession overall, even higher in the second half. But once again, I think it's just repetition that these guys will continue to need to get together.
And Sean, I'd be lying if I didn't tell you that I thought about you when I saw that, the fact that UNC was doing what they were doing, the way they were doing it. That points per possession number was just absurd.
Which real quick is help with the 3-pointer going down, since they struggled in the first half and earlier. Then all of a sudden they're rattling threes off, getting fast breaks, and putting points up very quickly.
Sherrell, this is the time in the show where I'm going to toot my own horn. But 3 game, and I don't get a chance to do this often. Y'all, I have kids, I have a wife. I don't get to brag on myself often, so I'm going to do it here on this here pod. I remember in the roundtable we did preseason, I talked about the fact that Drake Powell may never be the leading scorer for this team this season. but he absolutely could be a guy that put up 4 of everything. I think I called it a quadruple or something, where he could put up 4 rebounds, 4 points, 4 assists, 4 blocks or something like that. First off, I've seen him snatch 2 blocks out of the air that looks like something off of an old NBA Jam game. Um, the next thing I think that is just fascinating to me is the fact that he jumps in and immediately seems like instant energy in a stat column, and it's kind of like pick your column, right? He's going to come in. He's not going to come in and immediately hit 5 threes, but he's going to come in and do something that's positive. Right now, he's averaging a tick under 5 points a game, a tick under 6 rebounds a game. Sherrell, what I want to ask you is, could there be a better start for him doing exactly what I think everybody expected him to do? And are you even surprised a little bit to see how well and how seamlessly he's kind of adjusted himself?
I wouldn't say surprised. I actually, and this is because of how high I think everyone holds him in regard. Like, I want to see a little bit more, because you know what he's capable of. You know that, to your point, he can come in and guard the little guard. I think his name was Stevens, who was kind of cooking a little bit there in the second half.
Bismo Funyuns, yeah.
Yeah, they brought Drake in, and Drake kind of shut him down for the rest of the game after he had hit 12, 14 points in that early second half time frame. We've seen the block shots, we've seen the snatching of rebounds, we've seen him drive, bump into KJ Adams, one of the strongest players in the country, and hit a shot. I think we're seeing his all-around game, but I want to see more. And right now, I think because Jalen Withers has played beyond what most of us expected through 3 games, Drake hasn't quite got the minutes that we thought he was going to get. Maybe at the 4, he's got him more at the 3. But he is someone who is a very high IQ basketball player. He knows what he's doing. The ball does not stick when he has it. I mean, oftentimes he's kind of the pass before the pass that leads to an assist or a free throw attempt. So he does all the right things, and I think that's why they love him so much. And he's just his trajectory is definitely upward. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing him play more, honestly, because I mean, you're not even you talk about scratching the surface. You're not even at the surface to start scratching yet, because that's how much talent he has and how much he can help this team moving forward. But I really want to see him when it gets to Maui, and I guess we'll talk again before Maui actually starts. But I really want him to do the Remember the Titans thing with Hubert, where he's like, "Hey man, just go cover 22. That's all I need you to do. We'll talk about this one when it's over." So I really want to see Hubert Davis like just sick him on someone and say, "Don't let this guy do anything." That's the only thing you have to worry about, because that's something we haven't quite seen yet. Like I said, we saw it with the little guard from American, but I want to see him just dominate a game without even touching the ball.
This is why I love you, is because you never miss a chance to get a Remember the Titans reference in there. That's top notch. Run it up, Herman. Leave no doubt. Sean, go ahead.
So I think they're the two sides of Drake. Offensively, he's a guy that's in the bucket that still trying to define that role, and I think just the more minutes he gets, the more games it will slowly naturally come. I think from a personality standpoint, he's kind of the perfect 5-star freshman, almost similar to Marvin Williams, where he's not going to be a guy that needs to do everything, and he's going to be happy with the success from his teammates. So offensively, I think he's starting to pick things up and figure out how he can affect the game from a scoring and offensive perspective. But from a defensive end, obviously we saw the blocks, we saw the even when he closed out on the 3-pointer and tried to block it two-handed, you see things that nobody else on the team is gonna do, or many people in college basketball. But right now there haven't been a lot of possessions, but teams are shooting 1 of 7 against him, and it's definitely a low number. But I'll go back to the points per possession against Drake Powell. He's giving up 0.286 points per possession, which is pretty unheard of. Right now, Seth Trimble is probably the best on the team, and he's at 0.6. So right now, Drake Powell, I think, in a very small sample, is showing that defensive potential. But I think offensively, it's just going to take reps and continuing to find that role of what is his ideal fit, on this UNC team.
I clearly don't see these guys when they are prep recruits play as much as y'all do. But being, in proximity to Chapel Hill and knowing that he was on North Carolina's radar for a long time, I did see some of the stuff, not only that y'all did, but some other folks had put together out there on the web about his game. And there is a fluidity about Drake Powell's game right now that I did not expect to see. He had it some his senior year of high school, but the carryover in the fluidity and how smooth he looks, he doesn't look like the old Clydesdale on roller skates out there. He looks very easy, very even keel, even when he's off the ball or even when he, randomly gets a pass thrown to him. He always looks like he's under control, and his movement, his transitions back and forth just look. I don't know another way to describe it, but it's man. Plate of yams with extra syrup. It's very, very smooth, very sugary. Next thing I wanted to get to before we transition a little bit, there are some things I think this team can work on. So Sherrell, I want to see if you can point that out right now. I think the obvious would be shooting. They haven't been as consistent from the perimeter as we saw against American. 0 forever in the first half, and then Cade Tyson comes alive and breaks the seal in the second. But is there something specifically you feel like this team can work on this week before they head west?
Oh, defense, 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 defense. You talked about the slow starts earlier, and I think most of that is attributable to I don't want to say a lack of defensive intensity, but maybe defensive execution. I mean, there were several times where going back to Elon, the second half of the Elon game, there were several times where guys were getting to their spots. They were getting to the rim whenever they wanted. Obviously, that first half against Kansas was just not good defensively. I mean, Kansas was getting open mid-range jump shots. They were getting open threes. They were getting the ball in the post for easy, layups and hooks and dunks, and just was not good. And then in that first half against American, I mean, I know it was only 34 points, but again, you're talking about a team that wants to play excruciatingly slow. And, they had the guy we talked about before who was hitting threes. The first play of the game was a layup for American, their first point of the game. Just an easy layup. And I'm not sure what happened, where the rotation went, but I think a part of the slow starts because the offense, even when it's struggling against Kansas, they had 38 points at half, maybe 37 points at half against Kansas. So that's not a terrible number in college basketball right now. So even when the offense is quote unquote struggling, you need the defense to just be able to be competent so that you kind of either extend that lead or stay in the game. So that's the thing that needs to improve: rotations, defensive rebounding, just overall execution on the defensive end needs to get better because there's going to be games where you're not going to be able to get down by 15 or 20 and come back. We saw it happen against Kansas, but that's not how you want to live moving forward. So that's really, for me, the key because, again, I'm going to say this probably every week, with the way they want to / have to play this season because of some of the perceived limitations, defense starts everything. So if you play good defense, you grab a rebound, you can push tempo, and that gets everything started, and that's when they're at their best. So defense, defense, defense.
The player you're thinking about, Sherrell, actually was Murgatroyd Skittle. Sean, is there anything that you think that jumps out at you that they need to work on before they head for this pretty intense road trip to Hawaii? That kind of sounds like a bit of a misnomer, right? Rough, heavy road trip to Hawaii. Y'all know what I mean. Sean, what do you think they need to be working on this week?
Must be nice to be going to Hawaii.
Right.
I'll leave that there.
What's up, Adam? Adam Smith, who I'm sure doesn't listen to this show, but I saw him last night before the football game, and yeah, he's heading out there too.
There's another. There's another who's very close to here.
This podcast might be taking place next week in Maui, Joey. So
are you kidding me? I haven't mentioned lately how much I hate you, and it's not that I want you to die. I just want you to not live anymore. I'm very, very unhappy right now. No, man, you go do you. That's actually pretty awesome. Bring me back some swag. Go ahead, Sean. Tell me what you think they need to fix before you get to see them in Hawaii.
So it was Sherrell, right now defensively on synergy, 39th percent. And I think really when we saw UNC last year, I think we all agreed, hey, this isn't, a dominant or sexy defensive team, but every player was taking it upon themselves to not get beat off the dribble, contest shots, make things just challenging for everybody. And I think they, with the three guards, and not saying this is the full reason, but I think they have been a little lax in switching versus just staying with the guy, being aggressive, making tough shots. So defensively, I think it's once again, and it took a few games last year for them to get into that upper level that we did see. So I really think it's just taking that onus to keep your man in front of you, one-on-one defense, stay in front of them, stay aggressive. Offensively, once again, I think for some, like Cade Tyson, for example, I think seeing the ball go in the net, confidence for both him and his teammates, right? For seeing what he did, getting out on the fast break for that transition layup. But I do want to see him more active. I think for him to play well against better competition, which is going to be coming up in Hawaii, him hitting 2 threes is going to be very important, for these types of games. But he's got to be more than just somebody that they're going to put in the corner, because that's too easy to guard against these over athletic teams. So he's got to crash the boards. He's got to move around a little bit more. But he's just one of the examples from the fit perspective that's still trying to figure it out, I'd say. So more individual focused offensively and team focused defensively.
Yeah, I think again, I'm not trying to stand for the announcers against Liberty, but Crispin and Brown made a great point when talking about Cade Tyson the other night in the comparison to Brady Manick, about how the UNC team, when Brady Manick started becoming a sniper and finding spots on the floor to always hit those 3-pointers, really took the offense to the next level. I think right now it's not necessarily that Cade Tyson needs to hit 4 or 5 threes a game. He just needs to be the threat of a 3-point shot, and that will absolutely keep the defenses honest. And we'll, like you said, Sean, we'll create him some better places if he can continue to be active, to give him better opportunities to be more involved in the flow of the offense.
But the threat, along with just standing in one,
don't camp in the
one
corner.
spot. Yep,
I hear you. Yeah, no, that's something that I think as you're trying to find your way in a new program, in a new offense, it can be easy sometimes to just kind of get lost, not in the positive way of mentally immersing yourself in the game like Roy and Hubert like to talk about, but like you get lost on the floor and kind of get maybe tied to the corner. I used to have a coach that always said, why you keep going to the corner? Is there a sandwich over there? And maybe, I don't know if that's the same thing that he was finding the other night in the Smith Center, but he did find some positive results there when it happened. Sherrell, I'm going to ask you before we switch over and do a little bit of recruiting talk. And I do want to point out to everybody, go ahead and set your alarm now and steal your sleep where you can, because the Tar Heels tip off against Hawaii Saturday at 12:30 a.m. Eastern Time. That's 12:30 a.m. Eastern Time. So if you make it to midnight, you got another 30 minutes to get up and watch a basketball game, or just to stay awake before you watch a basketball game for the Tar Heels and Hawaii next week. Sherrell, I want to ask you, man, who have you been the most impressed with in this early stretch of the season?
I think it's the 2 guards. It's Elliot Cadeau and Seth Trimble. You could probably add Jalen Withers there, but there's always just those 1 or 2 plays where just kind of like what happened there. But those 2, I think specifically, I mean, again, not to go back to the Alabama game for the 765th time, but I think it's an important data point. Those 2 after the Alabama game were kind of the ones, I don't want to say targeted, but talked about the most as this was, outside of R.J. Davis not having a great game, this was the reason that they lost, because they were able to sag off of those 2. That put Grant Nelson in the lane. There was no room for anyone in the paint, and that disrupted UNC's offense, and that's the reason they lost, even though Carolina scored 87 or 85 points. So the fact that they were able to kind of pick themselves up, use the offseason, and turn themselves into, I don't want to say great players yet, but it's looking like potentially great players. I think that is a testament to their hard work. I think it's a testament to how Hubert Davis has run the program, in that it is just constant positivity. It is effusive praise. It is just positivity that permeates throughout the Smith Center. And I think because of that situation, because they felt empowered, and then because of what happened, you get this just combustible mix of, we're going to go out and we're going to show you, that we're better than what we showed in March. And that's where we are now, because, Trimble has, last year, you would say, offensively, man, sometimes he struggles to finish. not an issue this year. I mean, he's doing Euro steps, through defenders. He's dunking on people. He's finishing with his left hand. You would say, oh man, Trimble, if he gets to the line or if they leave him open for three, can he knock it down? One of the best 3-point shooters on the team, again, early, only through 3 games, but he's knocking down shots. He's making free throws. Cadeau, it was he could get a little wild. He would lose time and score and maybe try to do things that weren't there. Or he can't score, or he's not going to the rim enough. Pretty much every question that everyone had for those two over the last 5 or 6 months, they've already answered within the first 3 games in the 2 exhibitions. So for me, I would say that those are the 2 biggest standouts, just because they have elevated themselves to the point where Ian Jackson doesn't have to come in and be the guy like we all thought he was going to be beside R.J. Davis. Now he can come in and take a similar trajectory to Drake Powell and kind of ease in to everything. So if Cadeau and Trimble, they're obviously probably not going to play at this level the whole season, but if they can play at 85 or 90% of this level, and then you have Ian Jackson and Drake Powell kind of coming online, so to speak, in December and January, you got the makings of a really talented, deep team who can do a lot of things.
Sherrell, I will give you $100 if you can get Hubert Davis to ever say that positivity permeates to the post with either pass or penetration. I knew that would crack you up, but seriously, that's one of the last 3 words of stuff that he says all the time, and when he's talking about his style. And when you said positivity permeates, you might as well have just written that in boric acid on my wall and set it on fire. It was amazing. Sean, same question. What's something that's really surprised you so far?
All right. Well, not gonna take Seth Trimble since Sherrell covered him so well, but we'll just read off 3 quick numbers. So 139.2, 142.8, and 151.1. And those are the 3 offensive ratings of the big men from Van Allen Lubin, Jalen Washington, and Jalen Withers. Obviously, those are going to come down, or most likely will come down. Last year, Washington had a extremely high number in limited minutes, but right now they have been playing extremely well. One top team with 2, Hunter Dickinson and KJ Allen. Obviously, they got their points when it mattered, but if you've seen some of Dickinson's other stat lines, it wasn't as bad as it could have been. So I think those guys have just made, I think, life comfortable. Like you're not going to get 20 and 10, but between the 2 bigs, they've both been playing well, and Jalen Withers, I'll say for maybe one of the 2 pennies, but right now from an efficiency standpoint, they've both been playing well and haven't been trying to live outside of their means too much.
I think that one of the things that, first off, I love that you saved Jalen Withers, because I don't think we can have this show tonight and not mention what he's contributed this first 3 games of the season. But I want to go back to Sherrell's mention of positivity permeating. I think we also need to talk about how positivity might permeate through price and product selection at Johnny T-Shirt. Because Johnny T-Shirt, big supporters of this here show. I had somebody, when I posted on the premium message boards, which is where you can find your 10% off at Johnny T-Shirt discount code, I posted we were doing the show live tonight, and somebody said, well, that's good, because they needed to find out about where they could find some good UNC merchandise. And I'm glad that somebody raised that question, because you ask, I will tell you, it is at johnnytshirt.com. Or should you be in town for a basketball game when the team gets back, you can stop right there on East Franklin Street in Chapel Hill. Go see them in person. I think that there are quite a few opportunities coming up with home games after the holiday that you can get your own new gear at Johnny T-Shirt. Or if you want to plan, go to johnnytshirt.com, use your discount code, order it, have them ship it to you. You can wear it to the Smith Center. Either way, you're winning. And either way, you're supporting an organization that's run by alumni, family-founded, family-operated, great people. You'll take care of them. They support IC. You like IC. We want you to support them. We're trying to put you guys together. You listeners, you viewers, and Johnny T-Shirt. We want to hook y'all up. I want y'all to go out on your first date. Order things. Get gear. Be happy you did. It'll be a perfect marriage. You'll like it. You'll be very, very thankful that we were able to do that for you. If you're watching us live, I'm going to say something here. Just ignore it. This is for the audio version, where there will be some national advertisements that drop in right now. But we appreciate you being a part of this here show on Inside Carolina Coast to Coast podcast. All right, let's do a little bit of recruiting update. Somebody asked on the thread as well if there would be recruiting discussion. Hey, y'all, if there's ever recruiting news for us to talk about, you can bet your sweet behinds that we will talk about it on the Coast to Coast. Sean Moran, Sherrell McMillan, those are the guys that bring all the knowledge. Sean's really good at analyzing tape. Sherrell kind of follows recruiting, kind of as his status as the recruiting guru for IC. Sherrell, I'm going to come to you first. We've had a couple of not big developments, but things continuing to move along. North Carolina still has some eyes on a couple of big name fish that are still out in the pond there, but specifically Dennis and Dixon both have signed for North Carolina this past week as the signing period happened. So that's not really anything new, but they are official to North Carolina, which means the staff can talk about them now. Hubert Davis went on the record and put out a statement. So those two have officially signed and become part of the class. Sherrell, I'm going to ask you, is there anything that you'd like to add about those guys, or is there anything else you can update us about other prospects North Carolina is still in pursuit of?
I would say the other thing about having signed is that some of the rules are diminished a little bit. Like you said, they can talk about them publicly, but also they can send them like nutrition plans and weight plans. It's almost like they're enrolled at the university already once you sign. A lot of the restrictions as far as recruiting just kind of go away. So that's something I don't think maybe people realize.
Do they send them a week by week? How's that
how's
that for a deep cut?
Yeah, I'm not sure they send them a week by week, but something similar. Let's put it that way. But they can be a lot more involved, and so Isaiah Dennis and Derek Dixon will probably be seeing the UNC staff. I'm sure both are playing at some big events over the next month or so. Dixon again plays with a really well-known school, well-known coach that's going to have a national schedule, and then Davis and Day is playing more of a national schedule this year too. The big one I think for everyone around here is the John Wall Invitational. They'll be there. Lots of great competition from that the week after Christmas. So aside from that, Caleb Wilson, Eric Bossi, 24/7's National Director of Recruiting, kind of reported that Wilson is looking to cut his list soon. And then Wilson put out a social media graphic emoji that said soon. And so some people think that could be a commitment.
What does it mean?
Cutting his list. I would say with this recruitment, you're just not sure what it means. Soon could mean later, and later could mean soon with this recruitment. So just stay tuned. We'll let you know when we know something. I do think Carolina continues to recruit him. They were down there about a week ago, actually the day after the Kansas game. They went and had an in-home visit with him. It seems to be Carolina and Kentucky, but I think Ohio State is there where he's officially visited, and a couple other schools. So, Carolina's still there. They're hanging around. I don't know if we would consider them the favorite, but they are doing really everything they possibly can to try and get him. AJ DeBonsta, the number one player in 2025, another player that Carolina is, recruiting very hard. I think they have a chance, but conventional wisdom and I think the national perspective seems to be that BYU is still the leader. He plays out at Utah Prep, and he did go to the BYU football game this past weekend. And his recruitment is, again, Eric Bossi reported that originally he was going to commit in February, but it looks to be probably within the next month, before the end of the calendar year for sure. So that's kind of where things stand. Those are the two really known targets. UNC still kind of hanging around for Bundalo, but there's not a lot of movement there. So really, Isaiah Dennis, I almost did it. Isaiah Dennis signed, Derek Dixon signed, waiting on Wilson and DeBonsta. And then if those two decide not to go to UNC, there will be probably lots of decommits now with the way things are. There'll be players who ask out of their national letters of intent. Then there's also the transfer portal, which I will say, if you think there aren't players already thinking about the transfer portal or already having their agents talk to representatives or other places about the portal, even 2 weeks, 3 weeks into the season, then you're being naive because it's already happening. So that's the way that UNC will build the roster moving forward. Wilson or DeBansa, if they're able to get them. If not, then decommitments, release from national letters of intent, and then the portal.
I mean, for what I thought would be a pretty thin update, that was pretty heavy, man. Thank you. Sean, you actually got to watch Isaiah Dennis's two most recent games. Give me a couple of really high level things that you gleaned from watching him.
Yeah, first off, not in person, so was watching the replays. But for anybody that going throughout the season, NHFS Network does a pretty good job on covering a lot of the high school games. So that's how I was able to watch them. They won both games. One was an extremely tight game. The other was a blowout. So it made it a little easier as I was watching that UNC football fourth quarter last night as well. But in terms of Dennis, he struggled from three across the board. I think around one for 7. 0 for 1 yesterday, and then in the first game struggled in the first half. It was really the last 5 minutes that he turned it on. Still wanting to see more of him, as well as when Dixon gets going, but he's growing on me every game, I would say. From AAU, obviously shot well, 37% from the 3-point line. But I think from a ball handling and lead guard perspective, I could see how he could potentially fit into that slot when the time is right. I think obviously still some improvement needed, but he gets out extremely well in transition, likes to push the pace, very willing passer, delivers it, right in the catch range for his teammates. Definitely not a Elliot Cadeau type vision, but when you're looking at his AU stats, and it was a few rebounds, few assists, nothing really jumped off the board, but definitely with his size and speed in transition, I think that's been something that I've enjoyed watching, as well as his ability to get to the basket when he puts his mind to it. And then finally, defensively, posted on the premium message boards last night just a few quick clips from his game, but one of them was defensively, where he just really locked the other guard up, even though he was trying a lot of different types of moves to get to the basket. So they've had four games, and he's done pretty well. But once again, I think each game has started to grow me a little bit more and more.
I appreciate that, and obviously we love, and I'll speak on behalf of subscribers, that we love that you do these deep dives on some of these players, because it's good to know what they bring to the table, not only after they commit and sign, but what they grow, or how they grow, and what they add to their repertoire or hone their skills with as they get closer to matriculating to Chapel Hill. I'm going to shake things up a little bit tonight, guys. I told Tommy I didn't know how good I'd be at trying to take questions. I'm going to try to take a couple from our viewing audience here on the YouTube channel, and we'll let that serve as our 2 cents tonight. So it'll be a combination of 2 cents from Sean and Sherrell, but also from the live audience. And as we know, that 2 cents is brought to you by our friends at Congruity HR. This is an email address you're going to want to write down, matt@congruityhr.com. Matt is just the person that you need to know with regard to helping your small or medium-sized business. Matt will take care of you, get you the free assessment to help you find out if Congruity can help your small or medium-sized business. They're going to take care of your back office stuff, payroll, benefits, basically a lot of the HR things that most small and medium-sized business owners don't want to deal with. That's why they do it. It's because they know that you can be out focusing on what drives you, and not necessarily those things that could sometimes get you bogged down. Because HR stuff is important. You want to take care of your team. You want to take care of your staff. But you're probably a lot more likely to want to get out in the bed in the morning to go increase your top or bottom line, not to go focus on, are all your payroll needs taken care of. So hit up Matt, bottom of the screen right now, matt@congruityhr.com. He will help you with that small or medium-sized business assessment to find out what Congruity can save you, and I'm fairly certain that it is much more than 2 cents. But with that said, let's do some 2 cents. I did find a couple of good questions from our audience tonight, and one of those, Sean, is about our friend Jalen Withers. So I want to make sure that I get you that question, since I kind of held you back from talking about it earlier. But it really, and it's not a question, but I'm going to try to phrase this one. Our friend at WH1315, can y'all talk a little bit about Jay Witt and his role? So, Sean, what do you see from Jalen Withers that you feel like has been? I'm seeing a guy that looks like the best Tar Heel version of himself right now. What have you seen in specifics that would either confirm or deny that?
I'd say decisiveness. I think he is a guy, at least in this very early stage, has figured out slash carved out a role. So he's going to be able to space the floor. Loves that. Loves being in that left corner where he can shown he's willing to take that shot and willing to hit the shot. But I think more importantly, he's able to attack with two dribbles and get to the basket, which I think last year was he started to do more from the top of the key at certain times. But between that and his passing against American, I thought stood out. So to me, it was the decisiveness and the fact that I think he has carved out a role already where some of the other guys, like Kate Tyson, the freshman, they still need to come along and figure that out. So he a lot of people were counting him out early on, but he has kind of used that year of experience last year and as of now figured out how he can help this current team and has been doing it great. But it was really that aggressive drive to the basket from the left corner, two dribbles, slam that I think really define that decisiveness aspect of his game right now.
I hate to be a simp, but when you have the athleticism that Jalen Withers possesses, I feel like I want to see one of those every game. Like literally, power dribble, absolutely try to rip the rim off. And you could hear one of his teammates. I don't know the team's voices well enough yet, but one of the teammates said as he made that one move and with the little shot fake and got his guy off the ground, you could hear one of his teammates yell, "Dunk that ish," like on the parabolic mic that the TV production team has right there on the baseline. And man, did he ever! And I think it just shows you a little bit of what his athleticism can bring to this team. But to be able to start that play in the corner, like you said, Sean, and stretch the defense and then be able to get by somebody that easily and then make them pay, it's really, really refreshing to watch, especially knowing how at times he's seemed a little out of place because he certainly doesn't seem that right now. Sherrell McMillan, sir, it would not be an IC show without our guy, my guy, Sean Crowley. That's right. I just gave him the Corey Alexander treatment. Sean asks, is it realistic thinking that UNC can come home from this trip at 3-1? So Sherrell, yes or no? Is that realistic for North Carolina to come back from Hawaii with 3-1 record?
Yeah, I think that's I'd be surprised if it was anything worse than that, to be honest, because I think the Hawaii will be a test because that's their game of the century. Teams just don't like North Carolina just don't come play at Hawaii often. I think they'll win that game, and I think they should be able to get by Dayton. So then you're talking about really just winning one game against, Iowa State or Auburn or whomever. And I think they should be able to do that. So I think that's realistic, and I think that would be a good trip. Again, how it happens, or what happens in those games probably will play a part in how people feel about it. Like if they were to blow a 20-point lead, I don't think people would feel great about 3-1. But I think overall, if you take a step back, 3-1 would be a pretty successful trip, and I think it's possible / realistic.
Yeah, it's especially when you look at what teams make out that Maui field. We'll talk about that a little bit more next week, but I do think it's okay to consider worst case there. Sherrell, you're going to say something else?
I wanted to jump in since you took our 2 cents from us because I was going to put something on there about this. And so Hawaii's played 3 games, right? And we're recording this Sunday night, full disclosure. So they play Weber State tonight at like 10 o'clock. I will not be watching that for a variety of reasons. But through 3 games, I want you to just throw out a number of how many threes you think they've made in 3 games.
Because I don't know. Is Harold Arsenault Jr. playing for him?
No, this is Hawaii. No,
I know, but okay, sorry. You just say Weber State, and I got into my feels, man. I'm sorry.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's another reason I won't be watching the game.
Through 3 games, how many threes have they made? I'll take Sean's random number of 8 and say 24.
No, not even close. So they've made 9 threes in 3 games.
Dude, that's cheeks.
Yeah, so there's that aspect of it, but they also don't give up a ton of threes. They play pretty good defense. from behind the arc. So it's like I don't feel like that one should be a huge deal for UNC because usually when they get upset, it's when the other team is on fire from three. But I just thought that was interesting. Like RJ Davis and Elliot Cadeau combined have taken the same number of threes as the entire Hawaii team in 3 games. So anyway, uh, you know, for those who are going to stay up and watch, I just something to note. I thought that was interesting.
Man, that is a thing. That is some bad perimeter shooting. That's not the type of points per possession number that gets our friend Sean Moran happy. Sean, last question. This comes from M Barnes 915, who is joining us live, as almost 200 other folks are tonight. M Barnes asks, if everyone is playing at a high level near the end of the season, who's going to be the odd man out in a tightened rotation? So there's a couple of things that work there. That's assuming Carolina's playing at a high level, or that the whole team is playing at a high level. And that's also assuming that Hubert Davis will, as he's shown that he is wont to do, tighten that rotation up and kind of pare it down a little bit. So I'm throwing that really difficult question at you, sir, and seeing what you can figure out there.
That is a difficult question because with this team, there is a lot of talent. We've talked about the depth that this team has, as well as, in years past of trying to get to that eight man rotation in a lot of instances. So, I think Cade Tyson is up there. Obviously, right now he's still trying to figure out that role. And even if he does become the feared 3-point shooter, I think the defensive limitations could put him into certain more situational moments. And then the freshmen, to an extent, have been on record of Ian Jackson being the second leading scorer, which is going to be tough. But I think once again at Kansas early on, he looked to be one of the very few guys that was ready to take the fight to them. But he missed a great game last week where it would have been a good opportunity to kind of ease into the flow of the game, and we'll see about Hawaii. And then same thing with Drake Powell, who offers a lot defensively, but offensively still trying to figure out that flow. So given how well the 3 guards are playing, as well as Withers and kind of toggle the bigs, I think those would be my scenarios. But once again, I'm hoping that through Maui, and that's why I really wish there had been 1 or 2 more games at this point in time of allowing these guys to get into the flow, because right after that there's Alabama, etc. But once again, I think you need an Ian Jackson, Drake Powell operating at a high level and being incorporated into the system to achieve that high level we're talking about.
Yeah, and I appreciate your attempt at trying to, I guess, conceptualize something that would be 3 months from now, with a lot of development and a lot of potential variables affecting the answer. Go ahead, Sherrell.
What if he doesn't cut the rotation? What if this is
that's kind of what I was thinking when I first read out the question about that caveat of what if Hubert Davis pulls a 180 on us and says, nope, I'm not cutting the rotation. Sorry, we're still going to play this many guys.
Because I hadn't thought about it until I guess just now. But have we heard any Hubert Davis needs to play the bench more through 3 games this season?
And the tempo, when you have more possessions and you're playing at a higher tempo, it's going to demand more out of the legs that you have.
Yeah, and I think even at the beginning last year, in some of the quote unquote, games against lower competition or teams that aren't as gifted as UNC, it was still a thing. It was still like, oh, he's playing the starters too much. Haven't heard that a single time this year, and maybe it's just because they've been a little more, they were a little more dominant against American, and then because the second game of the year was at Kansas, so I guess naturally you won't hear as much about playing a deeper bench at Kansas, but it just hasn't been heard. And I was looking on KenPom too, and the number is still in the 220s, the bench percentage, but it is up. And obviously, again, sample size, snapshot, 3 games, all those caveats, but the number is significantly up from previous years. I think it's up 7% so far from last year. They were around 22% of the overall minutes went to the bench, and this year they're around 29%. So that is an improvement. It'll for sure get pared down, but I do think you have to ask this question, like, does he have 9 guys he feels good about? If he does, he'll play them.
Yeah, and at some point we got to give Dante Mayo his minutes. You guys out there pulling step back jumpers from 3-point range, like he's Dame Lillard. I don't know where that came from, and I know he was a very prolific high school scorer, but whoo, that dude was fun. And also, before we wrap up tonight, I want to give a shout out to the folks of the UNC Dance Marathon. Was going to the football game the other night, and one of the guys that was collecting money there, recognized me from the show and talked about what great work we did. So first off, I appreciate him for saying so. But I appreciate the Dance Marathon folks. If you guys ever have a chance to hook them up with some change when you're walking into Keenan or the Smith Center, take care of them. The Dance Marathon is a long-standing on-campus charity fundraiser that raises a ton of money for UNC Children's Hospitals, and just appreciate him saying hello. And I wish I'd have caught his name, but we were in a hurry. But I do appreciate what it is they do. So if he's listening, remember that, hey, thanks for saying hello, and I'm sorry I didn't catch your name, but I appreciate you listening to this here show. For everybody else, the folks that have been in the chat tonight, if you did not get to ask a question, hopefully we'll get to you sometime very soon in a future show. If we're able to do these live in the future, we will do them as our schedules permit. Again, I know the other shows are live and they do a great job of it, but it's tough for us to nail these down on a regular basis. But we do try, and hopefully this was a decent effort at it, and maybe we'll have something to draw from when we do another one. But it's been about an hour. I know that's getting close to my bedtime because I'm old. But I appreciate everybody for being in the show tonight. Thanks to Sean. Thanks to Sherrell. Thanks to John Sigley for producing. To our friends at Johnny T-Shirts and Congruity, we appreciate their sponsorship. But until next time, we will catch you guys very, very soon. Remember, UNC, 12:30 a.m. Eastern Time next Saturday. That's after midnight here, folks. Go ahead and set your alarms. Get all of the caffeine that you need or whatever you do to stay awake. You're going to need it. We'll talk to you very, very soon here on the Coast to Coast podcast. I'm Joey Powell. We will talk to you next time.